What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first full field edition of the 2020 campaign for the PGA Tour of the Opening Tee podcast. But that was kind of a mouthful here to start off the morning, I'm actually still recording here in the evening time, but certainly a little bit of a mouthful for you all to listen to on your drives into work or whatever you may be doing here on this Monday morning. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Jason Roslin. I'm going to be doing a solo pod today, as Ben is still heavy duty on the football stuff, and he'll be joining me on this segment or on this podcast quite a bit as we move into the season. So if this is your first time joining me on the Opening Tee podcast, what I do here is I give you a quick review of last week, the action that went on, what the play, who was involved, whatnot, so that if you didn't watch it all, if you didn't even catch 1 minute of coverage, I'm going to give you a good quick recap. I'm going to give you a foursome of facts. That's our first little segment. Second segment, I'm going to add in this year. It's my high and low of the week. I'm just going to try and pick one thing on each side that I got right and got wrong. Likely every single week I'm going to get at least one thing right, I hope, and probably at least one thing wrong. Although the weeks that I don't get anything wrong, or at least get very little wrong, are likely going to be some of my best weeks on the DFS side. And we'll go into the not your average missed cut. Endless amounts of content for this segment. I can always come up with at least 2 or 3 good ones every single week. Then we do a statistical review of the previous week's contest to see if we can spot any trends or any hot players, or somebody that just needs a hot putter, or somebody that just needs a hot iron game, or other games. Then we'll go into the DraftKings points review just to see if there are any anomalies of players outscoring their finishing position. We'll highlight this DFS contest and go over one of the winning lineups from the previous week and just break it down really quickly. And then we'll head into this week's or the current week's tournament. We'll talk about the golf course. We'll talk about the field. And then I'm going to give my top 5 or 6 prices, however many golfers I believe will be over 10K in the field this week. And then I'll preview the Shot 3 from the Tee podcast, where we go into a little bit more of the statistics that'll be important for this week. We'll recap all of the prices that come out for DraftKings. And, of course, the field changes, sponsors exemptions, and Monday qualifiers. So a bunch of information on that Shot 3 for the Tee podcast. But for now, we'll focus on this one, the Opening Tee, part of the Foursome Golf podcast series. Of course, we've got a great number of specials going on right now for the beginning of the season. So please feel free to go check that out on our Twitter. We're running a $1 promotion right now. PGA 2020 is your promotion code for that when you go to check out. All right, let's dive right into the Foursome of Facts from last week. And normally we'll include the Euro Tour for this as well, so you'll get a good breath. But if you didn't watch, Xander Schauffele blew the tournament, really. Now, the fact that he was in position to win was kind of crazy in and of itself. They came down the 18th hole. Justin Thomas was at minus 15. Schauffele and Patrick Reed were at minus 14. Patrick Reed was already in the clubhouse. Xander Schauffele hit it to the middle of the green, or actually I shouldn't say middle, back right of the green, had a 30-footer for eagle. Justin Thomas was in the shrubs, had to take a penalty shot, then hit a nice approach, hit it to about 4 feet for his par putt and knocked in his par putt, and Xander, did not knock in his par putt, missed it to go back to minus 14, and Xander 3-putted for par, also coming in at minus 14, forcing a 3-way playoff. It was there for our second fact of the week. Justin Thomas picked up his second win at the Kapalua course over Patrick Reed. Heading back to that first one, though, that first bullet point where Xander really blew the tournament, his position of winning golf tournaments really has come from behind, whereas he hasn't been able to close out a 54-hole lead. So maybe something to take a look at. I'm sure Xander will certainly learn from. He had all the opportunity in the world to win this and win his second straight. So as we move on to our third one, all golfers that came, I sometimes fumble that, I apologize. All of them that came in the top 5 were ranked inside the top 20 in the world, except for Neiman, who had a great week. So as you can see, cream rising to the top here at Kapalua. no surprise, but certainly something to keep a note of. And the last fact of the week, this one is one of the more funny ones. A golfer that just won a tournament while losing strokes tee to green, his name Kevin Na, lost almost 6 strokes putting this week. So a terrible week on the greens. His approaches actually look pretty good. So something interesting to note maybe heading into this week. So my high and low of the Tournament of Champions. Sorry, that evaded me for a second. Pretty easy up top. JT, I had number 2 on the board right behind John Rahm, if you look at my total ownership of the guys up there. So that was pretty good for me, as well as Xander and Cantlay were both in my top 5 owned and both finished in the top 5 as well. However, going Patrick Cantlay over Patrick Reed cost me some money, so that was on the bad side. The 2 more on the bad side, I guess it was my highs and lows for this week. It's so easy to find the highs and lows this week with only 34 golfers. So normally, hopefully, I will fine-tune this a little bit, but Joaquin Niemann outplayed Cameron Champ by just a little bit. Positional points did not have many more birdies than Champ, but Niemann obviously had less bogeys, which gave him the positional points. So Niemann over Champ was huge in my book. Poston over Munoz by 3 points. So maybe that was a little bit less than I should have said. However, Tyler Duncan and Lanto Griffin both over Sung Kang was really the deciding factor of getting into the cash with some of those non-JT lineups that had Patrick Cantlay and, say, Xander Schauffele, or Patrick Cantlay and Dustin Johnson. It was going Sung Kang there instead of Lanto Griffin and Tyler Duncan, both who had better weeks. So that was really also what came down to one of those decisions was the difference between a top 20 lineup and a top or a top 10 lineup on FanDuel. I had a 10th place between a top 10 and 25 and a top 5 or a top 3, which of course when playing in GPPs you really got to try, at least the way that I play, you really got to try and get in the top 5. If you get into a top 5 of a GPP, normally that'll pay for the week, if not start to turn a profit. So that's always the goal. Wasn't able to accomplish it this week. You can get my full recap on my own week, playing, of course, in the winning element. All right, let's head into some statistical review as we're just about 7 minutes in. If this, again, is your first time, I like to keep these around 20 minutes to just keep them short and sweet. Nobody wants to listen to me talk that much anyways. Plus, I probably get redundant after an amount of time anyway. So heading into the statistical review, which I'm going to do every single week, which we have strokes gained data, which from now until the Masters, it's likely every single tournament, except for the Pebble Beach where we only get it at one course, but we'll put that aside. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the strokes gained statistic with one of or the only traditional statistic that one would look at, just so we can compare a little bit and see if there's any difference and maybe find out a couple more guys. So this week, we'll start off with strokes gained off the tee. No surprise to see Cameron Champ and Matt Wolff up there. But Sung Kang and Xander Schauffele also very, very good off the tee this week. And Colin Morikawa round out the top 5. I used driving accuracy because the fairways were so easy to hit. I wanted to see who was actually hitting them all. So Ches Reavie, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa, Brendan Todd, and Ryan Palmer were the top 5 in driving accuracy last week out at Kapalua. Interesting to note, Colin Morikawa is the only one there that was in strokes gained off the tee and in driving accuracy. So maybe something to take a look at Wailea this week, where driving distance matters a little less, I would say. And Morikawa obviously confident in his team game right now. He will be in the field. Moving on to strokes gained on the approach, Patrick Cantlay was number 1 in the field. No surprise, he almost holed out from 250 yards and had plenty of other great shots. So Patrick Cantlay was on, but still didn't get enough done with the putter to get into that minus 14 range. Justin Thomas, Graham McDowell, Lanto Griffin, and Xander Schauffele were the top 5 in strokes gained on the approach. Its corollary non-traditional stat is greens in regulation. Xander Schauffele led that one, Corey Connors, Justin Thomas, Max Homa, John Rahm, and Patrick Cantlay again round out the top 6. So some good crossover there. 3 of the top 5 in strokes gained approach were found in greens in regulation. So good corollary stat there. Maybe take a look at Corey Connors coming up this week. And Max Homa. Max Homa, normally a very good putter. Did not putt well, which we'll find out coming up in a bit. Brings me into strokes gained putting. Hey, that was a little bit lucky on the lead in there. We're actually, since strokes gained around the green, which you can find out more in my first cut article that you should probably have an opportunity to read now. Matters very little here at Wailea this week, so I didn't include it. Normally I will, but so I just did putting, approach, and driver. So, okay, strokes gained putting, Patrick Reed, no surprise, was unbelievable with his flat stick last week. Then Dustin Johnson, JT Poston, Sebastian Munoz, Patrick Cantlay again. Oh, that's right. He had a pretty good putting week. It was off the tee, where he put a couple balls out of bounds. And Joaquin Niemann, whereas we go to the traditional stat, the putts per green in regulation. Patrick Reed, Justin Thomas, JT Poston, Ryan Palmer, and Patrick Cantlay. So, again, this one is 3 out of 5 as well. So, some good correlated statistics. Worst putters of the week go to Martin Trainer, Kevin Na, who we already mentioned. No surprise to see Paul Casey and Keith Mitchell there. Maybe a little bit of a surprise to see Sung Kang, who is hot and cold with it. And then Max Homa, like I said, normally a very good putter, but not this week. So maybe he'll be able to find it with less elevation out in Oahu this week. Finishing up, the only golfers that we'll say the top birdie review, it's all of the top 5 who you'd think, but interesting to note, Cameron Champ was up there actually. He came in 6th in terms of total birdies, whereas Sung Kang and Ryan Palmer were probably the other 2 in the top 10 that would make note. Paul Casey as well, he snuck in there too. All right, just going on to our last 2 reviews. So 12 minutes, maybe a little longer. I maybe jibble-jabbled for a little bit there, so apologize there. I like to try and get through my reviews in about 10 minutes. Really nothing to talk about in terms of the DraftKings points review because it was such a tight field. 10th and 12th and 20th place in terms of DraftKings points scored were only separated by 12 points. That won't happen on most weeks. It was such a tight field. The course didn't really present many birdies except for all the holes that everybody was birdieing. So just not much discrepancy this week. In terms of the DFS contest, we had an 8-way tie in the $8. Hate to see that. Still over an $8,400 payout. $44 was a 2-way tie. Same lineup as the $8. The $200 was won at 20 points less, 542 points. And that was the single entry. And then the 555 was won by 550 points. So a little bit higher than the $200 single entry, as one would expect. So that ties and puts a bow on this year's Tournament of Champions. It really was exciting. No better way to start off the PGA Tour season than a 3-way playoff with some of the best and most marketable players out there. So great way for the PGA Tour to kick off their year. And hopefully that just spills over onto the DraftKings side as their partnership with the PGA Tour's partnership with DraftKings kind of hopefully at least kicks off. Sorry, that was a little loud there on the hopefully part. So we turn our attention to the Sony Open and Wailea Country Club, as I already mentioned. This one so incredibly, vastly different than the Kapalua course. When I was out there a couple of years ago, I went to both. And Kapalua presents itself as a mountainous course with elevation changes on almost every single hole. Whereas you come out here to Oahu, certainly there are mountains. There's Diamond Head Peak that's out in the distance past Waikiki Beach, which is probably about, I would say, 5 or so miles away from this golf course, maybe 10. Maybe not that much if you're going by ocean. However, the course sits really down at the lowest part of the valley. Very, very little elevation change for the golfers this week. The golfers saw very little trees on the course. They saw more gorges and valleys and such. Here, it'll be more tree-lined, more tropical tree-lined at Wailea, so presenting a little different of a challenge. And nice also that all types of winners can win here. It's a par 70, under 7,100 yards. We've seen guys like Justin Thomas, bombers like Ryan Palmer and Jimmy Walker win it in years past. We've also seen like Matt Kuchar and Zach Johnson, guys that are more plotters, are known to just plot their way around the course, also win here. So we like a course that is wide open and doesn't really favor one golfer set over the other. Totally opens up the field. Speaking of the field, it's a basic main PGA Tour tournament, which the field then consists of prior winners of majors, of course, and the Players' Championship, and also top 125 on the FedEx Cup points list last year, and of course the top 50 for the Korn Ferry as well. So a normal PGA Tour event. I won't go into too much depth on the qualifications of the field unless it's a weird one like a WGC or something of that nature. What the field consists of is 29 of the top 100 in the world, headlined by the winner of the Tournament of Champions, Justin Thomas, and the guy who he beat in the playoff, or at least one of them, Patrick Reed, along with 21 other golfers from the Tournament of Champions. But rounding out the top 5 in OWGR, which all of these guys are ranked in the top 25 in the world, is Webb Simpson, Hideki Matsuyama, and Matt Kuchar, as I just mentioned. And they're joined, like I said, by 25 or so other golfers in the top 100 in the world. So a pretty good field for all intents and purposes. Plus, you've got a strong middle part of this field with golfers like Sungjae Im and Cameron Smith and Abraham Answer, and throw in Joaquin Niemann if we're talking about the President's Cup for golfers that are going to be here this week. So let's go now into my last section, which I guess I've caught back up on time, but that's because I missed one of my favorite sections, which we'll get back this week, is the Make the Cut. Obviously, we didn't have a cut out in Maui, so we will get one certainly this week in Honolulu. Golfers will be looking to find that 6-hour red-eye flight from Honolulu back to probably Phoenix or Dallas, maybe Los Angeles on the West Coast if that's all it's going. But there'll be a plethora of golfers, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 or so, that will be heading home this weekend. It's a field of 144, and the top 65 and ties will make the weekend. Okay, so we're going to go to the prices this week, and I think we see the 12K figure. I think there's no doubt in my mind with Justin Thomas, a previous winner here, coming off of the win at the Tournament of Champions. I fully suspect JT to get the first 12K price tag of the year at 12.2K. I suspect Patrick Reed's not going to be too far behind him either. Now, certainly not 12K. Maybe somewhere in the low 11s. I got him somewhere at 11.4 or 11.5K. If you're going to nail me down to one, I'll say 11.5. Got Webb Simpson next on the board. I think Webb might cross the 11 mark, maybe, but I'll go with 10.8 as my official guess. Followed by Colin Morikawa at 10.6. You know, Patrick Reed was 9K last week, and Colin Morikawa was 8,600, I believe. So I think you're going to see a similar discrepancy this week with Reed's form, maybe showing he's in a little bit better form than Morikawa, but still, I didn't even notice it, but I'm going to stick with it at this point. Is Morikawa ahead of Matsuyama? Since Morikawa is coming off of the top 10, maybe DraftKings algorithm gives him the nod, but Matsuyama is going to come right in there next at 10.4K. Leaving us the sixth and final guy, and I'm going with the course history angle over Sungjae Im. I'm going Matt Kuchar at 10.2K here. Maybe Sungjae Im. I don't think they're going to put 7 guys above 10. I haven't seen that in a real long time. So I think they probably throw Sungjae Im somewhere at the 9.8K range. If that's the case, or if he's anything lower, you can probably expect me to have quite a bit of him in my lineups this week. As I believe that this course certainly could be a great place for him to win, but I think he's prime to win as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed your first, or I think this is probably my 10th stop now, doing the Opening Tee podcast, where I'm just trying to give you a 10-minute review of last week, trying to catch you up on all of the happenings, trying to give you a couple of players that are playing this week that you might want to focus on via the statistical review. And then, of course, get you started with this week on what we're going to face on the golf course. Like I mentioned, it's a short course, par 70, 7,100 yards. All of the par 3s are within the 175 to 200 range. All of the par 4s are under 500 yards, but only one below 400 yards. So very small window. We're going to be hitting a lot of similar irons this week, which is why you see a lot of the times strokes gained on the approach be so important here, averaging over 2 per round for the winners. And that's because once you get hot with one set of irons and you have that comfort, certainly a golfer can get hot, and they'll be hitting a lot of those same irons this week. So Wailea Country Club, the Sony Open, one of the most long-standing tournaments out there. It should be a fun week. This week we've got a really good field. Like I mentioned, almost 30 of the top 100 in the world are here to compete. So we will see you on the other side tomorrow night. Shot 3 from the tee. I'm going to have Matt Jones at Matt Jones DFR joining me. He and I will be talking about par 4 scoring between that 400 and 475 yard mark that I just spoke of. We're going to be talking about strokes gained on par 70s under 7,100 yards. And lastly, that proximity from 175 to 200. So until next time, everybody, cheers. I hope you've enjoyed this version of the Opening Tee podcast, and we'll see you on the other side.